Israeli strikes in Gaza Strip have claimed at least 51 more Palestinian lives, raising the death toll since October 7 to more than 41,700, including nearly 16,500 children. More than 96,700 others have been injured and thousands remain buried under rubble, threatened by illness. The Israeli attacks have severely impacted Gaza, damaging more than half of the region's homes, either through destruction or significant damage. Approximately 80% of commercial facilities have also been affected, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in the area. Israel's offensive has continued since the Hamas attack on October 7th, despite a UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. The campaign has displaced nearly the entire population of Gaza, worsening critical shortages of food, clean water and medical supplies due to the ongoing blockade. A civil defense spokesman in Gaza City stated, "One of the most difficult situations is when we see someone under the rubble and cannot do anything for them."
بعد 7 أكتوبر الأمور مختلفة بشكل كامل. الحرب دمرت كل شيء لم نشهد حقيقة مثل هذه الحرب في قطاع غزة، يعني ربما أقول في حياتنا كلها وخلال ممارساتنا للأعمال الإنقاذ وعمليات الإطفاء لم نشهد مثل هذه الأحداث بالمطلق حتى في الحروب السابقة.
Israel launched its largest airstrike on Beirut's southern suburbs, shaking the city with explosions that activated car alarms and shook buildings. The bombardment targeted the outskirts of the capital, including the international airport's perimeter, marking one of the most intense attacks so far. Israeli military has not issued an official statement, and Hezbollah has not commented on the matter. Reports suggest that Hashem Safedin, a potential successor to Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, was a primary target of the attack. In a separate strike, Israel bombed Lebanon's Masna border crossing with Syria, cutting off a crucial route used by hundreds of thousands of people fleeing the escalating conflict. The strike left a large crater at the crossing, which Israel claims was used by Hezbollah to smuggle military equipment. Lebanese authorities reported that more than 300,000 people, mainly Syrians, have fled to Syria in recent days. With shelters overcrowded and winter approaching, the UN has expressed concerns about the worsening conditions for displaced individuals. The escalation follows Iran's missile attack on Israel earlier in the week, raising fears of a wider regional conflict. Israel has intensified its operations in southern Lebanon, ordering evacuations of multiple towns as part of its broader goal to secure its northern border, following sustained exchanges of fire between Hezbollah and Israeli forces.
تفاجأنا الساعة 3 الصبح إنه إسرائيل ضربت المعبر. نعتبر هذا المعبر نحن معبر حيوي لمنطقة البقاع وللبنان كله يعني. وهذا المعبر الوحيد الإنساني اللي بعده عم بيفلوا منه النازحين من لبنان السوريين واللبنانيين اللي عم بيطلعوا فيه على الشام، عم بيهربوا من القصف الإسرائيلي اللي عم تتعرض له المناطق اللبنانية.
مثل ما أنت شايف نحن بدنا نروح على سوريا وناخذ ناس ونجيب ناس من سوريا، ومثل ما أنت شايف سكر الطريق علينا، وبعد الحفرة مش قادرين مش عارفين شو بده يعملوا فيها، يسكروها ما يسكروها، كرمال العالم تروح وتجي.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has warned that the possibility of a regional war is real, urging unity among Muslim nations. In a rare appearance, he led Friday prayers for the first time in 5 years, signaling Iran's strong stance against Israel. His speech, delivered partially in Arabic to reach the broader Muslim world, called for a united front against Israel, which he described as a shared enemy of Palestine, Lebanon, and other Muslim nations. Khamenei also defended Iran's recent missile strike on Israel, calling it a legal and legitimate action. He emphasized that Iran would neither rush nor delay in fulfilling its duty to confront Israel, while condemning Israeli actions, particularly assassinations and civilian killings, as false claims of strategic victories. Khamenei's remarks came shortly after Iran's foreign minister landed in Lebanon, in a visit seen as an act of defiance. The minister is expected to meet with key Lebanese leaders, including Hezbollah allies, reinforcing Iran's regional alliances.
حضور من در بیروت در این شرایط دشوار و در حالی که هر شب و هر لحظه رژیم صهیونیستی بیروت رو بمباران میکنه خود بهترین نشانه است که جمهوری اسلامی ایران همچنان محکم و استوار پشت سر حزب الله خواهد بود و به حمایت از شیعیان لبنان و مردم لبنان ادامه خواهد داد.
He also reiterated support for Hamas, describing their October 7th attack on southern Israel as a legitimate act of self-defense, arguing that Palestinian people have a lawful right to defend themselves against occupation forces. Khamenei also criticized the US and its allies for supporting Israel, accusing them of securing Israel's role as an energy exporter to the West. His speech reflects Iran's intent to bolster regional alliances and resist isolation in the face of escalating tensions.
کاری که نیروهای مسلح ما کردن کمترین مجازات برای رژیم غاصب صهیونی در برابر جنایت‌های حیرت آور اون رژیم بود.
Haiti's deepening humanitarian crisis has displaced more than 700,000 people, over half of them children, as gang violence ravages the country, according to a UN report released this week. The surge in internal displacement, up by 22% since June, has left families in makeshift shelters with limited access to basic services. Pierre, who now lives in a school-turned-temporary shelter in Port-au-Prince, describes her ordeal and the lack of housing policies as a critical issue.
Lem tap gen sin de tout de aussi gen la fait gen parasi en bien kounya m'a vivre la fait là même kounya m'a vivre la fait là.
The violence, driven by powerful armed groups vying for control, has triggered widespread instability across Haiti. More than 110,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in the last 7 months. The UN report also states that 75% of displaced are now sheltering in provincial areas where resources are scarce.
Il faut que l'État continue à faire tout ce qu'il peut faire avec l'appui de la communauté internationale pour régler la question de sécurité. Mais la famine qui s'annonce sur les enfants, les familles pauvres, démunies là, nous au niveau international, on doit agir vite. Et agir vite veut dire c'est maintenant. Il faut qu'on apporte l'assistance de nourriture rapide à tous ceux qui en ont besoin.
As Haiti grapples with escalating violence and a looming famine affecting nearly half the population, international intervention remains critical to prevent a further deterioration of the crisis. Kamala Harris' lead over Donald Trump in the US presidential race is so small that the election is still too close to call. Harris leads Trump by 2 or 3% overall, and her lead is about the same in the most vital of the swing states. But that means that it's well within the 4.5% margin of error for polls. Harris has improved the Democrats' polling since she took over the candidacy from President Joe Biden, and she did well against Trump in the one presidential debate to which Trump agreed, but not as well as her running mate Tim Walz did in the vice presidential debate against Trump's VP candidate J.D. Vance. Trump's campaign have more or less given up on running positive ads for their candidate and now concentrate almost wholly on attack ads designed to discredit Harris. Trump's team are struggling to keep the former president on message as his public appearances are increasingly incoherent.
But they must get Apple to open these foreign apps, and they must get Apple to likewise open the 6 phones from the second lunatic, who's a lunatic, and open them immediately because we have a lot at stake.
Pollsters say that Trump is now a known quantity and that his flaws are discounted by his supporters, whereas Harris is still relatively unknown, still trying to rise above the holding pattern role of Biden's vice president. Even if Harris does pull ahead of Trump in the popular vote and sustains that lead in the swing states, she may still have victory snatched away by the votes in the Electoral College, which do not exactly reflect the number of votes cast. With 40 days to go, the race for the most powerful political post in the world is still too close to call. NATO's newly appointed Secretary-General Mark Rutte made his first official trip to Kiev, solidifying his role as a steadfast ally to Ukraine in its ongoing battle against Russia's invasion. During his meeting with President Vladimir Zelensky, Rutte reaffirmed NATO's unwavering support, emphasising Ukraine's crucial fight for freedom as a reflection of European values.
I come to Ukraine at the start of my mandate to make crystal clear to you, to the people of Ukraine, and to everyone watching, that NATO stands with Ukraine. As the new NATO Secretary General, it is my priority and my privilege to take this support forward, working with you to ensure that Ukraine prevails.
Amid the sounds of air raid sirens, Rutte vowed to push forward Western support. The former Dutch Prime Minister, who took office just days before, emphasised that aiding Ukraine is a priority under his leadership, especially as the war continues to intensify in the eastern regions. Rutte's visit came on the heels of a devastating Russian glide bomb attack on Kharkiv, which further underscored Ukraine's urgent need for enhanced military support, including long-range weapons and advanced air defence systems. Zelensky echoed this, urging Western allies to boost their assistance ahead of an upcoming NATO meeting in Germany.
Ми потребуємо достатньої кількості і якості зброї, далекобійної зброї в тому числі, з якою партнери, на мою думку, вже затягують. І ми говорили сьогодні щодо українських потреб у ППО та у додатковій взаємодії з сусідами. Ми бачимо, як, зокрема, на Близькому Сході вдається захищати життя людей завдяки єдності союзників. Більше рішучості партнерів в нашому регіоні – це те, що потрібно, щоб покласти край російському терору. Ми будемо і надалі переконувати наших партнерів щодо необхідності збиття російських ракет і дронів. Ми розуміємо, що це складне рішення, але тим не менш ми дуже розраховуємо на обговорення цього рішення.
As Ukraine continues to face relentless pressure on the battlefield, NATO's new chief expressed confidence in maintaining the alliance's commitment, regardless of the outcome of upcoming US elections. With €40 billion in assistance and a new bilateral security agreement in place, Rutte reassured Kiev that its future within NATO remains a key focus of his tenure.
London Mayor Sadiq recently announced £575,000 in new funding for grassroots community projects aimed at tackling hate, extremism, radicalisation and far-right narratives. This funding is part of the £4 million shared Endeavour fund, which has reached over 140,000 Londoners since 2020 and is included in the Mayor's wider £15 million investment to combat all forms of hate. We asked the Mayor about the achievements of the Shared Endeavour Fund, its role in countering far-right narratives and the steps being taken to ensure the sustainability of these projects. Hear what he had to say.
So for a number of years now, City Hall, since I've been Mayor, has been funding grassroots organisations that do really good work with young Londoners of different backgrounds. We know, unfortunately, over the last few years there's been a big increase in hate crime, including Islamophobia, including anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred. So on the one hand, we're supporting our police to make sure they support minority communities, including Muslims. On the other hand, we're funding grassroots organisations, and these grassroots organisations work with young people to build resilience, to make sure they've got the tools to respond to hatred, We're safeguarding vulnerable youngsters so they're not sucked into radicalisation and extremism. We're giving communities the skills to stop the spread of Islamophobia, racism and anti-Semitism. So there's a number of grassroots organisations we fund. I'm slightly nervous mentioning some because others will be upset, but I'll mention a couple. They're all great, by the way. Solutions Not Sides is an example of a group trying to educate young people about the conflict in the Middle East, of all communities, not just Jewish and Muslim Londoners. The Nas Legacy Foundation does some really good work in relation to working with young Londoners, making sure that they can deal with issues of Islamophobia, busting some of the myths that exist. Maccabi UK works with lots of young people in relation to, explain to them some of the people who try and divide communities, give them the skills to respond to that and so forth. The key thing is to start early. So the Anne Frank Trust is working with primary schools, and there's another group working with young primary schools as well. We've got Muslim leaders, Jewish leaders, those who are experts in the far right, those from different backgrounds working with young people. Chelsea Football Club are doing great work with us as well, because Chelsea Football Club football and sports is a good way to reach young people. So Chelsea Foundation do great work with us. We've supported 140,000 young Londoners using 95 organisations. We want to now fund 20 more organisations supporting 9,000 young Londoners. We can't be complacent in relation to these issues.
Proposals to allow terminally ill individuals in England and Wales the right to end their lives will be introduced in Parliament this month by Labour MP Kim Leadbeater, after MPs rejected a similar bill in 2015. Leadbeater believes now is the time for a fresh debate on assisted dying. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has pledged a free vote on the issue, having previously supported a change in the law. The bill is expected to mirror a proposal in the House of Lords, allowing terminally ill adults with 6 months or fewer to live to seek medical assistance in ending their lives. However, the proposal faces opposition, including from Baroness Tanni Gray-Thompson, who voiced concerns about the impact on vulnerable people and the accuracy of diagnosis. Public interest in assisted dying has grown, partly due to broadcaster Dame Esther Rantzen, who after being diagnosed with lung cancer, joined Dignitas in Switzerland. Rantzen advocates for the right to die with dignity, stating that the current law endangers families who assisted loved ones in ending their lives abroad. In Scotland, certain groups have voiced their concerns to the proposal, arguing that the reality of assisted suicide contrasts with the portrayal presented by its proponents. In countries where assisted dying has been legalised, safeguarding measures are quickly eroded, putting the most vulnerable individuals at risk.
The Prime Minister has promised to try and get this to a vote before Christmas. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm very, very impressed that given all the challenges, national and international, he remembers the conversation we had before the election, in which he made it clear that this is something he does feel very strongly about. The law at the moment is unsatisfactory, and being a lawyer himself, I think he thinks it's important that laws should be just and fair and clear, which this one is not.
In the violent streets of Buenaventura, Franklin Minna's story is one of resilience and hope. Growing up surrounded by gang warfare, the 27-year-old was expected to fall into a life of crime like many others in his community. Instead, thanks to a government program called Youth in Peace, Minna now studies social work and runs a small stationery business. He's one of nearly 3,000 young Colombians benefiting from an initiative designed to pay youth in high-risk areas to stay away from violence and focus on their education and future. Launched by President Gustavo Petro, Youth in Peace provides monthly payments around $250 to individuals aged 14 to 28 in regions plagued by gang violence. The goal? To give young people an alternative to the grim choices that many of their peers face, joining criminal gangs or becoming victims of them. With the money, Minna was able to invest in a computer and supplies for his shop, whilst also supporting his studies.
Siempre es bastante complicado vivir en un barrio que ha sido muy golpeado por la violencia. ¿Por qué? Porque, por ejemplo, yo desde muy niño yo conozco que es una pistola, yo conozco que es una bala, y no es muy sencillo. Y hoy las personas creen que eso no deja secuelas y sí deja secuelas, ¿sí? Porque conocemos desde muy cerca todo el conflicto. Entonces digamos que para nosotros, que hoy yo haya tomado un camino diferente, es porque sencillamente también he tenido la fortaleza de pensar distinto. Pero pues no ha sido fácil tampoco.
Minna's journey is just one example of the program's potential. Youth in Peace seeks to break the cycle of violence by providing economic and educational support to young people from impoverished backgrounds, aiming to prevent them from becoming embroiled in Colombia's decades-long conflicts. As the country grapples with the legacy of over 6 decades of armed conflict between guerrillas, paramilitaries and drug cartels, projects like Youth in Peace are central to President Petro's strategy in tackling violent crime. For beneficiaries like Minna, the program offers a rare chance at transformation.
Por ejemplo, tal yo con el recurso lo puedo invertir aquí en este negocio para poder generar no solamente pues ingresos para mí, sino también de pronto para mi familia, y con el tiempo esperamos que esto pueda ampliarse y generar oportunidades también para otros jóvenes también como yo.
Though Youth in Peace, the initiative, has its challenges, it represents a bold step toward dismantling the violent structures that have gripped Colombia for generations, giving its youth a chance to chart a different course.